You think you know what heartbreak feels like? Let me tell you, that's nothing. Real heartbreak is a choice. It's looking into the eyes of the person who is your entire world and deliberately shattering his trust into a million pieces. I did that. I broke William's heart to save his life. And the worst part, it worked. The smell of rain clung to the air that night, a damp, cold chill that seeped through the thin walls of my tiny apartment. But the cold I felt inside was 1,000 times worse. It was a deep, gnawing freeze that had taken root in my soul the moment I conceived this terrible, necessary plan. "You're sure he'll come?" Mason's voice was low, hesitant. He was a kind man, down on his luck, and the money I had offered him was a lifeline. He didn't want to do this. I could see the guilt already etching lines on his face. "He'll come," I whispered, my voice trembling. I made sure the note sounded urgent. Anonymous. "Your Clara is not who you think she is. See for yourself tonight." "He'll come." Saying the words felt like swallowing glass. I was setting a trap for the man I loved, with his own desperate love for me as the bait. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp that cast long, dancing shadows. They felt like ghosts, these shadows, witnesses to my betrayal. I could hear the beat of my own heart, a frantic, panic drum against my ribs. This was it, the point of no return. "Okay," Mason said, his voice thick with discomfort. "Okay, let's just get this over with." He sat on the edge of my bed, and I moved to sit beside him. My body felt stiff, robotic. This was a performance, the role of a lifetime, and I had to be convincing. I had to make him believe it. For his own good. For his survival. My father's debtors were not patient men. They were vicious, with threats that were not empty. They had shown me pictures, graphic, horrifying pictures of what they would do to William if I didn't get him away from me, if I didn't make him leave this city, leave me, for good. They saw his ambition, his fire, and they knew he would try to be my hero, and they would break him for it. They would break every bone in his beautiful, strong body and leave him in a ditch. I couldn't let that happen. I would rather he hate me forever than be dead because of me. So, when I heard the familiar, heavy footstep on the creaky wooden stair outside my door, my blood ran cold. "He's here," I breathed, the words barely audible. I looked at Mason, my eyes wide with a terror that was all too real. "Now," I pleaded, "you have to make it look real." And as the doorknob began to turn, I did the most painful thing I have ever done. I reached out and I placed my hand on Mason's cheek, leaning in, so close that our silhouettes would merge into one intimate shadow from the doorway. I forced my body to relax against his, to feign a comfort, an intimacy that made my skin crawl. I closed my eyes, but all I could see was William's face. The door swung open, and there he was. My William. He stood frozen in the doorway, a statue carved from shock and disbelief. He was drenched from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his old jacket dark with moisture. In his hand, he clutched a single, slightly crushed daisy, my favorite. He'd brought me a flower. Even after an anonymous, accusing note, he'd brought me a flower. The world stopped. The air was sucked out of the room. I pulled back from Mason as if shocked, scrambling to my feet, my performance of surprise and guilt already making me feel sick. "William!" I gasped, and the fear in my voice was genuine, but he would mistake it for the fear of being caught. His eyes. Oh God, his eyes. They were the eyes of the little boy he once was, the one who was always left out, always forgotten. The betrayal I saw in them was so raw, so complete, it was like a physical blow. He looked from me, to Mason, to a rumpled bed, and then back to me. The love in his eyes didn't just fade, it was incinerated, replaced by a fire of such pure, undiluted agony that I felt my knees go weak. "William, I can explain," I started, the lie already forming on my tongue, a bitter poison. He didn't speak. He just shook his head slowly, a minute, devastating movement. The daisy fell from his hand, landing on the floor with a soft, final thud. It was like watching his heart fall out of his chest and land at my feet. When he finally found his voice, it wasn't the strong, confident tone I loved. It was a ragged, broken thing, shredded by pain. "All this time?" he whispered, his gaze locked on me. "All this time I thought I was finally someone. To you. I thought I was finally home." Tears streamed down my face, hot and uncontrollable. They were real. They were for him, for us, for the beautiful future I was murdering in this very moment. "It's not what you think," I cried out, the scripted line feeling like a betrayal in itself. A harsh, ugly laugh escaped him, a sound I'd never heard from him before. "What should I think, Clara? That you were just comforting him?" He took a step into the room and the energy shifted. The heartbroken man was receding and the hardened survivor was taking his place. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched. "Who is he?" Mason stood up, holding his hands up in a placating gesture. "Mate, look, it's not—" "Get out!" William roared, the sound so full of fury it made the window pane rattle. Mason flinched, glanced at me with a final, apologetic look, and practically fled from the room, squeezing past William in the doorway. And then it was just us, the betrayer and the betrayed, the destroyer and the destroyed. The silence that followed was louder than the scream. William's chest heaved with ragged breaths. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the exact moment the last thread of his hope snapped. "Why?" The word was a plea, a prayer, a curse. This was my moment. This was the crux of my sacrifice. I had to be cruel. I had to be the villain in his story so he could be the hero of his own. I straightened my spine, forcing a coldness into my voice that I didn't feel. "Why? Look at you, William. You have nothing. You are nothing. This life, this poverty, I can't do it anymore. My father's debts are crushing us. I need someone who can actually provide for me, who can solve problems, not be one." I saw the words land, each one a separate dagger. I saw him flinch as if I'd struck him. I was using his deepest insecurities, the very wounds from his childhood, and I was pouring salt into them. "So this," he gestured weakly to the space where Mason had been, "this is what you want? A man you have to pay to be with?" "He can give me a life," I said, my voice trembling, despite my efforts to steady it. "A real life, not this struggle. I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of you." The lie was so monstrous, so antithetical to every feeling in my body that I thought I might vomit. I was tired of him? He was the only thing that made the struggle beautiful. He stared at me for a long, long time. The storm in his eyes settled into a flat, dead calm. It was worse than the anger, so much worse. "Okay," he said, his voice now eerily quiet. "Okay, Clara, you win. You are free of me." He turned to leave, and a panic like I had never known seized me. This was it. Forever. "William, wait," I cried, taking a step forward. He paused at the doorway, but he didn't look back. His shoulders were set in a hard, unyielding line. He just stood there, waiting for me to speak, to possibly twist the knife even deeper. But I had nothing left. No more lies. No more truth I could give him. All I had was a sob that ripped from my throat. He heard it. I know he did. I saw his back tense. But it didn't matter anymore. I had convinced him. He walked out of my apartment, out of my life, stepping over the crushed daisy on the floor. The door clicked shut behind him with a soft, final sound that echoed in the silence of my soul. I stood there for I don't know how long, frozen, listening to the sound of his footsteps fading down the stairs. Each step was a hammer blow on the coffin of our love. When I could no longer hear them, I collapsed to the floor, my body racked with sobs so violent I thought they would tear me apart. I crawled to the doorway and picked up the ruined daisy, clutching it to my chest as I curled into a ball on the cold, hard floor. I had done it. I had saved him. I had driven him away to safety. And in doing so, I had destroyed us both. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly have known as I lay shattered on that floor, was that my sacrifice was only the beginning of the storm. The consequences of that night were going to ripple through the years, shaping us into different people, and setting the stage for a collision that would be even more devastating, and ultimately more redeeming than I could ever imagine. Because a few weeks later, I discovered a secret growing inside me, a tiny flickering light in my overwhelming darkness. I was pregnant with William's son. And William, my beautiful, broken William, his pain was only just beginning. The car accident that nearly took his life happened just a month after he left me. The doctor said it was a miracle he survived. But the William who woke up in that hospital bed, he was a different man. The last soft parts of him had been carved away, leaving only hardened stone and a burning, cold ambition. He thought my betrayal was the worst pain he would ever face. He had no idea that just a few miles away, I was holding our son, our Leo, and whispering his name to a man who would never know him. The story didn't end that night. It was only just beginning. I named him Leo, for a lion, for the strength I knew he would need in a world that had already been so cruel to his father. He was this tiny, perfect thing, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that, even when they were the hazy blue of a newborn, held a familiar, intense focus. William's eyes. Looking into my son's face was like looking at a ghost, a beautiful, painful ghost of the love I had destroyed. The years that followed were quiet, a muted sort of life. We lived in a small, sunlit apartment on the other side of the city. I worked from home, doing seamstress work, mending other people's clothes while I tried to mend my own life. Leo was my joy, my entire world. He was a happy child, curious and affectionate, but there was a quiet thoughtfulness about him that reminded me so much of William, it sometimes stole my breath away. He would ask about his father, of course. All children do. "Where is my daddy?" he'd ask, his small voice, so innocent it broke my heart. "He's far away, my love," I'd say, brushing the hair from his forehead. "But he would be so proud of you, so very proud." It was a weak answer, I know. But what could I say? That I drove him away with a lie to save his life? That was a story for a man, not for a little boy. So I built a life for us, a simple, safe life, filled with bedtime stories and park visits, and the quiet hum of a love that was, for the most part, enough. But the shadow of William was always there. I'd see him sometimes, not in person, but in the newspapers. The headlines were hard to avoid. Self-made millionaire William Hayes buys another company. Hayes Corporation expands globally. There would be a picture, always in black and white. He looked older, harder. The softness in his jaw had been replaced by a sharp, unforgiving line. His smile, when he offered one for the camera, never reached his eyes. He had built an empire from his rage, and I had built a small, quiet sanctuary from my regret. And then there was Dr. Oliver, Dr. Aaron Oliver. He came into our lives when Leo was 5. Leo had been feeling tired, getting sick more often than the other kids at his preschool. I thought it was just a string of bad luck, a weak immune system, but then the bruises started. Little purple marks on his arms and legs that appeared from nowhere. My mother's intuition, that deep, primal knowing, screamed at me that something was terribly wrong. The hospital was a blur of white coats and fluorescent lights and a cold, creeping fear that settled deep in my bones. Dr. Oliver was the one who delivered the news. He sat down with me in a small, sterile room, his kind eyes filled with a compassion that almost broke me. Clara, he said, his voice gentle but firm, Leo's blood tests. They're not what we'd like to see. He has a condition, aplastic anemia. It means his body isn't producing enough new blood cells. The world tilted. The words sounded foreign, terrifying. What what does that mean? I whispered, my voice trembling. It means he's very sick, Aaron said, not shying away from the truth. He's going to need blood transfusions and likely a bone marrow transplant. It's the best chance for a cure. A cure. The word was a lifeline. I clung to it. Okay, okay, whatever he needs, take my blood, take my marrow, take anything. I would have given him my own heart if it meant he would live. Aaron gave me a sad, understanding smile. We'll test you, of course, but the best matches are usually siblings or parents. We need to find Leo's father, Clara. And just like that, the carefully constructed wall I had built around our lives came crashing down. The past wasn't past. It was here, in this sterile room, demanding its due. I felt the color drain from my face. His father, he's not, we're not in contact. For Leo's sake, Aaron said, his hand gently covering mine on the table. You have to try. I had no choice. The lie I told to save William was now forcing me to drag him back into my life. The irony was a bitter, cruel taste in my mouth. I gave them William's name, William Hayes. I watched as the nurse typed it into the system, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I prayed he was traveling, that he was unreachable, that some administrative error would lose the request. But William Hayes was a powerful man. His name was in the system, attached to a corporate health plan that was probably platinum plated. The call was made, the request was sent. The day he walked back into my life, it felt like the universe had paused, taken a deep breath, and then exhaled pure, undiluted chaos. Leo was sleeping, hooked up to IVs, looking so small and fragile in the big hospital bed. I was holding his little hand, whispering to him when I felt it, a shift in the air, a presence. I looked up, and there he was, standing in the doorway of the hospital room, William. It had been over 6 years, but time seemed to collapse in on itself. He was taller, or maybe he just carried himself with a new imposing authority. His suit was impeccably tailored, dark and severe, a stark contrast to the soft clinical whites of the hospital. He was no longer the rain-soaked, heartbroken boy from my memory. He was a man, a formidable, powerful, and utterly furious man. His eyes, those eyes I had dreamed up 1,000 times, swept over the room. They took in Leo, so pale in the bed, and for a fleeting second I saw something raw, something unguarded flash in their depths. A shock, a confusion. Then his gaze landed on me, and it froze over completely. It was like being stared down by a glacier. There was no warmth, no recognition of our shared past, no softness. There was only a cold, simmering rage. Clara. He said my name like it was a curse. My mouth went dry. William? He stepped into the room, his movements controlled and precise. He didn't look at me again. He walked to the side of Leo's bed and just looked. He studied our son's face, the shape of his nose, the curve of his brow. I saw the exact moment the truth clicked into place. The resemblance was undeniable. How long? His voice was low, dangerously quiet. I swallowed, my throat tight. He's 5, almost 6. He turned his head slowly, and the full force of his anger was like a physical blow. 5 years? He repeated, the words dripping with venom. You kept my son from me for 5 years? William, it's not that simple. Not that simple? He cut me off, his voice rising, though he kept it contained, a harsh whisper that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. What could possibly be simple about this, Clara? You let me believe you betrayed me. You let me walk away. And all that time you were carrying my child? My heir? The word heir struck me as so cold, so corporate. This wasn't about a son. It was about property he'd been denied. I did what I had to do to protect you, I insisted, my own voice shaking with a mixture of fear and a long suppressed anger. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Protect me? From what? The responsibility of my own child? Don't you dare. Don't you dare paint this as some noble sacrifice. He leaned in closer, and I could feel the heat of his anger. You are a liar. You were a liar then, and you are a liar now. You kept him from me because you are selfish, because you wanted to punish me. Tears welled in my eyes, hot and stinging. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have every idea, he seethed. I have spent years building myself into a man who cannot be broken. And you hid the one thing that could have. He stopped himself, shaking his head as if to clear it of a dangerous thought. It doesn't matter. It ends now. Just then, Aaron Oliver walked in, holding a clipboard. He stopped short, sensing the tension so thick you could taste it. Mr. Hayes? Aaron said, his tone professionally calm. I'm Dr. Oliver. We spoke on the phone. Thank you for coming so quickly. William straightened up, turning his formidable attention to Aaron. He looked him up and down, taking in his kind face, his concerned demeanor, the way he instinctively moved to stand a little closer to me, a gesture of silent support. I saw William's eyes narrow. The calculation was instantaneous. He saw a man in my life. A good man. A doctor, standing by my side in a crisis. And in William's eyes, hardened by betrayal, it all fell into a pattern he thought he understood. Dr. Oliver, William said, his voice now smooth as polished steel, all traces of the earlier rage expertly concealed. The tests. You're sure I'm a match? The initial blood typing confirms it. You and Leo share a very rare blood type. It's why it was so urgent to find you. You're his best chance for a transplant. William didn't even flinch. He looked from Aaron to me, and then back to our sleeping son. Then it's settled. I'll do whatever is necessary. He will have the best care money can buy. No expense will be spared. That's good to hear, Aaron said, visibly relieved. We'll need to run some more tests on you, of course, to ensure you're a viable donor. Of course, William said, his tone all business. My lawyers will be in touch with the hospital administration to handle all the financial arrangements. And, he added, his gaze slicing back to me, they will also be in touch with you, Clara. A cold dread trickled down my spine. What for? A cold, predatory smile touched his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. For custody. Full and legal custody of my son. The world dropped out from under me. What? You can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life, he said, his voice dropping to that deadly quiet tone again. You have proven yourself to be an unfit mother. You concealed his existence. You raised him in whatever circumstances you have. He gestured vaguely, dismissively at the humble hospital room. I can give him a stable home, the best schools, a future. Everything you denied him. And me. He is my life, I cried out, stepping toward him. You can't just take him from me. Watch me, he said, his eyes glinting with a chilling certainty. You had your chance to be a family with me, Clara. You threw it away. You don't get a second chance. But my son does. He turned and walked out of the room without a backward glance, leaving me standing there, shattered, for the second time in my life by the same man. Aaron moved to my side, his hand on my arm. "Clara, breathe," he said softly. "He can't just do that. The courts would never." "You don't know him," I whispered, watching the empty doorway where William had vanished. "You don't know what he's capable of when he's been wronged." The next few days were a nightmare of a different kind. It wasn't the quiet, medical fear for Leo's health. It was a loud, legal, terrifying assault. William's lawyers were like sharks. They descended upon me, with papers, with threats, with motions. They painted me as an unstable, deceitful woman who had intentionally deprived a child of his billionaire father. They argued that my financial situation made me incapable of providing for Leo's medical needs. They were relentless. I was losing. I could feel it. I was drowning in a sea of legal jargon and William's bottomless wallet. It was in the middle of this war, with Leo growing weaker, that William proposed a truce, a devil's bargain. He came to see me in the hospital cafeteria. He sat across from me, a king condescending to meet with a peasant. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "The lawyers are draining you. And this fight is a distraction neither of us needs while Leo is sick." I just stared at him, too tired, too heartsick to respond. "I am willing to withdraw the custody suit," he said, his voice cool and businesslike, "on one condition." I knew it would be bad. I braced myself. "What condition?" He leaned forward, his intense eyes pinning me in place. "We get married." I actually laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. "You hate me." "This isn't about hate or love," he said, as if explaining something simple to a child. "This is about optics, about stability. A judge looks far more favorably on a united parental front. A family. This marriage will guarantee I remain his primary donor without any legal challenges from you, and it will ensure he stays with you, under my roof, with my resources. It's a business arrangement. A contract marriage." The words were so cold, so calculated. To take the most sacred promise two people can make and turn it into a transaction. It was the ultimate perversion of everything we had once been. "You would chain yourself to me, a woman you despise, just for appearances?" I asked, incredulous. "For my son," he corrected me, his tone sharp. "I will do anything for my son. Even this." And I knew, looking into his resolute face, that I would too. I would do anything for Leo, even walk back into the gilded cage of his life. Okay? The wedding was a bleak, formal affair at the city courthouse. There were no flowers, no music, no family. There was just William, me, our lawyers as witnesses, and the cold, impersonal voice of the judge. William wore the same severe black suit he'd worn to the hospital. I wore a simple, off-white dress I'd bought at a department store. When the judge told him to kiss the bride, he leaned in, his lips brushing my cheek with all the passion of a business handshake. It was the loneliest moment of my life, and that was saying something. He moved us into his penthouse. It wasn't a home. It was a museum, a monument to his success. All cold marble, sharp angles, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a city that seemed miles away. It was beautiful and utterly soulless. Leo had his own wing, filled with every toy and gadget a child could ever want. He was confused at first, but children are adaptable. The sheer scale of the place was an adventure to him. William was present, but absent. He provided everything. The best doctors were flown in. Leo's treatment plan was executed with military precision. William was tested, poked, and prodded, and he endured it all without complaint. For Leo, He would come into Leo's room in the evenings and read to him, his deep, calm voice a soothing balm. He was a good father, a natural. Seeing that, seeing the careful, tender way he handled our son, made the whole situation even more painful. This was the man I had fallen in love with. This capacity for love was still in him. He just kept it in a vault, and the only key was for Leo. For me, there was nothing but cold civility. We were roommates, co-parents, business partners in the enterprise of raising a sick child. We ate dinners together at a long, formal table, the silence between us broken only by Leo's cheerful chatter. Afterward, William would retreat to his home office, and I would retreat to my own bedroom, a lavish but lonely suite far down the hall from his. The nights were the hardest. Lying in that big, empty bed, in that silent, cold apartment, I would remember. I would remember the heat of his skin against mine, the way he used to whisper my name like a prayer in the dark, the feeling of being so completely seen, so completely cherished. Now, the man who held those memories lived just a few doors down, and he looked at me as if I were a piece of furniture. And then there was Dr. Oliver, Aaron. He was a constant, gentle presence throughout it all. He came to the penthouse for checkups, his kindness a stark contrast to William's icy demeanor. One afternoon, William was away at a meeting, and Aaron was checking Leo's vitals. Leo was napping, and we stepped out into the living room. "How are you holding up, Clara?" he asked, his voice full of a genuine concern that made me want to weep. I wrapped my arms around myself, looking out at the sprawling city view. "I'm fine," I said, the automatic lie. "You don't have to be fine," he said softly. All of this, it can't be easy. Living with him." I turned to look at him. It's what I had to do for Leo. He was quiet for a moment, studying me. "I know you don't have many people to talk to, and I know my feelings for you, well, they complicate things, but I want you to know, I'm here, as a friend, always." And in that moment, I felt so seen, so understood that the walls I'd built around my heart crumbled a little. A single tear escaped and traced a path down my cheek. "Thank you, Aaron," I whispered. "That means more than you know." I didn't hear the front door open. I didn't know William had come home early, but I felt it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I turned, and there he was, standing in the doorway of the living room, his briefcase in his hand. His eyes were fixed on us, on my tear-streaked face, on Aaron's close, comforting proximity. His expression was unreadable, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Aaron, ever the professional, immediately straightened up. "Mr. Hayes, I was just finishing up Leo's checkup. He's resting comfortably." William didn't acknowledge him. His gaze was locked on me. "Clara, a word." Aaron gave me a final sympathetic nod and let himself out. The door clicked shut, and we were alone in the vast, silent room. William didn't move from the doorway. "Comforting, is he?" he said, his voice dangerously soft. "It's not what you think," I said, wiping my cheek. "Isn't it?" He took a step into the room. "It seems history has a funny way of repeating itself. You, looking for comfort in another man while you're tied to me." The accusation, so unjust, so blind, ignited a fury in me I didn't know I possessed. "You are unbelievable. Aaron is Leo's doctor. He was being kind to me, something you have forgotten how to be." "I don't need to be kind," he shot back, his own anger rising to the surface. "I provide. I protect. That is my role in this arrangement. I don't recall providing emotional comfort to my deceitful wife being part of the contract." "I am not your property, William," I yelled, the sound echoing in the sterile space. He was in front of me in 3 long strides. He didn't touch me, but he loomed over me, his presence overwhelming. "Aren't you?" He hissed. You signed the papers. You wear the ring. For all intents and purposes, in the eyes of the world and the law, you are my responsibility, and I will not have that responsibility compromised. The word mine hung in the air between us, charged with a dark, possessive energy that was nothing like the loving possession we'd once shared. This was about ownership, control. I can have your name and my ring, I whispered, my voice trembling with rage and a heartbreaking longing. But you will never have me again. Not like that. A strange, dark smile touched his lips. We'll see about that. He turned and walked away, leaving me shaking, the ghost of his threat lingering in the air. The tension between us after that was a live wire, sparking and dangerous. We orbited each other in the penthouse, two stars caught in a destructive gravitational pull. The air was thick with everything we weren't saying, with a history that was a minefield, with a passion that had curdled into resentment, but had never, ever died. It all came to a head the night of the charity gala. William insisted I go. Appearances, Clara, he'd said flatly. Remember? So I went. I wore a stunning emerald green gown he'd had sent to my room. I wore my hair up. I looked the part of the wealthy, sophisticated wife of William Hayes. Inside, I felt like a fraud. The gala was a whirlwind of crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes, and hollow laughter. William was in his element, the powerful, charismatic host. He kept a firm, possessive hand on the small of my back the entire evening, a constant, burning reminder of his claim. I smiled until my face ached. It was there, amidst the clinking glasses and the murmur of polite conversation, that I saw him. Mason. He was older, dressed in a slightly ill-fitting server's uniform, carrying a tray of canapés. Our eyes met across the crowded room. His widened in shock, then filled with a profound, immediate guilt. He looked away quickly, trying to disappear into the crowd. But William saw the exchange. He felt my body go rigid under his hand. What is it? He asked, his voice low in my ear. Nothing, I breathed, my heart hammering. I feel a little faint. Can we go? He studied my face, his eyes narrowed. He'd seen Mason, I was sure of it, but he just nodded, a cold, calculating look in his eyes. Of course. The car ride home was silent. The penthouse was dark and quiet when we entered. Leo was sleeping at his grandmother's for the night. We were completely, utterly alone. I made a beeline for my bedroom, desperate to get away from him, to process the shock of seeing Mason. Not so fast. William's voice stopped me in my tracks. I turned. He was standing by the grand piano, slowly pouring himself a glass of whiskey. Who was that man, Clara? He asked, his tone deceptively casual. What man? The server, the one who looked like he'd seen a ghost when he saw you. He looked familiar. It's been bothering me all night. And then I remembered. The man in your bedroom, all those years ago. My blood ran cold. William, please. What is his name? He demanded, his voice losing its casual edge. Mason, I whispered, seeing no way out. Mason, he repeated, rolling the name around in his mouth like it was poison. And what is Mason doing here, at my event? He works for a catering company you hired. It's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences, he said, putting his glass down with a sharp click. He started walking towards me, slowly, deliberately. I think you're still in contact with him. I think this whole tragic story of yours, the sick son, the desperate mother, I think it's just another one of your plays. Are you and your lover trying to get more money out of me, Clara? Is that what this is? The injustice of it, the sheer blindness of it shattered the last of my control. "You are a fool, William Hayes," I cried out, tears of frustration streaming down my face. "A blind, arrogant fool." "Then make me see," he roared, finally closing the distance between us. He grabbed my arms, not hard enough to hurt, but with a firm, unyielding strength. "Tell me the truth for once in your life. Why was he in your room that night?" I was sobbing now, years of pain and sacrifice and loneliness pouring out of me. "I paid him to be there. I paid him to pretend to be my lover." William went perfectly still. His grip on my arms loosened slightly. "What?" I was sobbing now, years of pain and sacrifice and loneliness pouring out of me. "They were going to kill you," I sobbed, my body shaking. "My father's debtors. They showed me pictures of what they would do to you if you didn't stay away from me. You were so proud, so stubborn. You would have tried to be the hero, and they would have murdered you for it. So I made you hate me. I made you leave. I thought if you believed I was worthless, that I had betrayed you, you would walk away and be safe. I broke your heart to save your life." I was barely coherent, choking on my tears, my body slumping against him in utter exhaustion. The weight of the secret I had carried for so long was finally lifted, and I felt hollowed out. William was silent. He didn't move. He just held me, his body rigid with shock. I could feel the rapid beat of his heart against my chest. He slowly, so slowly released my arms. His hands came up to cradle my face, his thumbs gently wiping the tears from my cheeks. His touch was different, not angry, not possessive. It was reverent. "All this time," he whispered, his voice hoarse, shattered. "All this time I thought I built my entire life on the foundation of your betrayal. I let it harden me. I let it fuel me. And it was all a lie? A beautiful, terrible, selfless lie?" I could only nod, my eyes searching his, seeing the walls inside him crumble one by one. The fire of his anger was gone, extinguished by the tidal wave of truth, and in its place was a dawning, devastating awe. And then, a pain so profound, it made my own heart ache for him. "Oh God, Clara," he breathed, his own eyes glistening. "What have I done? What have I done to you?" He pulled me into his arms, crushing me against his chest until not a sliver of space remained between us. I could feel the frantic, wild beat of his heart hammering against my own. His kiss wasn't gentle. It was a desperate, soul-wrenching claim, a silent vow that the waiting was over. He held me as if I were the most precious, fragile thing in the world, as if he were trying to absorb all the pain he had caused me, all the years we had lost. "I'm sorry," he whispered into my hair, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I called you a liar. I threatened to take our son. I married you to punish you, when you had already punished yourself 1,000 times over for me." He pulled back slightly, his hands framing my face again, forcing me to look at him. The cold, hard businessman was gone. The wounded, loving man I had fallen in love with was back, his eyes full of a raw, unguarded emotion that took my breath away. "You sacrificed everything for me," he said, wonder and horror in his tone. "Your happiness, our love. You should have been my wife years ago. You should have been by my side, raising our son, sharing my life. And I threw it all away because I was too proud, too hurt to see the truth." He leaned his forehead against mine, his breath warm on my skin. "Can you ever forgive me?" And in that moment, seeing the real William, my William, return to me, all the anger, the resentment, the years of loneliness just melted away. "There's nothing to forgive," I whispered. "I would do it all again, to keep you safe, to keep you alive." A single tear escaped from the corner of his eye and traced a path down his cheek. I reached up and wiped it away with my thumb. And then he kissed me. It wasn't the cold brush of lips from our wedding day. This was a kiss of reclamation, of apology, of a love that had been buried but never dead. It was desperate and tender, passionate, and heartbreakingly sweet. It was a promise, a new beginning. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathless, our tears mingling. "The contract," he said, his voice firm now, filled with a new purpose. "It's void. This marriage, it ends tonight." My heart stuttered. "What?" A genuine, beautiful smile, the first real one I had seen from him over 6 years, spread across his face. "I'm not married to the woman who betrayed me. I'm married to the woman who saved me. And I want to do it properly. I want to marry you, for real, for love. Tomorrow." He didn't wait for an answer. He swept me up into his arms, and this time, he didn't carry me to the lonely room down the hall. He carried me to the master suite, his sanctuary. The door clicked shut, sealing us in a world that consisted only of us, of the past finally being put to rest and a future that was suddenly blindingly bright. He set me down gently, his eyes dark with a hunger I remembered, a hunger I thought was lost to me forever. This time, there was no hesitation, no coldness. His hands came up to frame my face, his thumbs stroking my cheeks as he looked at me with a reverence that made my knees weak. "I've missed you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "God, I've missed you every single day." His mouth found mine again, but this kiss was different. It was deeper, more demanding. It was a kiss that held 6 years of lonely nights and angry days, all of it transforming into a heat that threatened to consume us both. I could feel the frantic beat of his heart against my chest, or maybe it was my own. They were pounding in the same wild rhythm. His lips trailed from my mouth, down the line of my jaw, to the sensitive spot on my neck that he and only he had ever known. A shiver, hot and electric, shot straight through me. My head fell back, and a soft, involuntary sound escaped my lips. I felt him smile against my skin. "I remember," he murmured, his hands moving from my face, skimming down my shoulders, my back, pulling me flush against him. My own hands were not still. I was fumbling with the buttons of his crisp white shirt, desperate to feel his skin against mine. When I finally pushed the fabric from his shoulders, I let my palms flatten against the warm, solid muscle of his chest. I felt him shudder under my touch, this powerful, untouchable man, trembling at my simple caress. It was the most intoxicating feeling in the world. There were no more words after that. Words were useless. They had betrayed us for too long. Now it was only about feeling, about touch. He guided me back onto the bed, the sheets cool against my feverish skin. He followed me down, his body a welcome, familiar weight. Every point of contact was a brand, a claim, a promise. His hands were everywhere, tangling in my hair, tracing the line of my spine, cupping my hip with a possessiveness that was no longer about control, but about devotion. The world narrowed to this room, to this bed, to the scent of him, the feel of him, the taste of him. It was a slow, deliberate exploration, as if we were rediscovering a sacred map we had both forgotten. It was an ache building to a fever pitch, a tension so exquisite it was almost painful. It was the feeling of two halves, shattered and broken for so long, finally clicking back into place, making each other whole. The air was thick with our shared breaths, with soft whispers of each other's names, with the rustle of sheets and the pounding of hearts. It was a symphony of reunion, passionate and raw and utterly consuming. The love, the longing, the years of heartbreak, it all converged into a single shattering moment of pure, incandescent release that left us breathless and clinging to each other in the aftermath. We lay tangled together in the quiet darkness, his arms locked around me, my head on his chest, listening to the steady, strong beat of his heart. There were no more walls between us, no lies, no contracts. The past was forgiven, burned away in that all-consuming fire. All that remained was the truth of us, finally, completely together. We were married again a week later, in a small, sun-drenched garden, Leo was there, holding the rings, his little face beaming with health and happiness. The bone marrow transplant had been a success. William's gift to his son had worked. As we said our vows, real vows this time, promising to love and cherish each other through everything, I looked into William's eyes and saw my future. Our future. We moved out of the cold penthouse and into a real home, a house with a backyard where Leo could play. William learned to smile again, a real easy smile that reached his eyes. He learned to let down his guard, to trust, to love without the constant fear of being broken. We were not just trapped and redeemed by his love, we were saved by it. And we spent the rest of our lives making up for every single second we had lost. And that, my darlings, is our story. A story that proves that sometimes the deepest love is found not in the easy moments, but in the storm. It's forged in sacrifice, tested by fire, and redeemed by truth. If our story made you believe in second chances, then maybe my next story will too. So you should probably go ahead and subscribe to find out.